Rich Rising, Rich Rising. Welcome to another reading from NEW260, where we were reading a new chapter of the New Testament every weekday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. There are 260 chapters in the New Testament, and there's 260 weekdays in the year. So we're here every weekday at 8 a.m. studying to show thyself approved. We like to say that a chapter a day keeps us aligned with God's way. So today we are actually in Matthew chapter 17, and here we'll be covering the transfiguration, the boy with the demon, the temple tax, and the money in the mouth of the fish. It's a relatively short chapter in comparison to some of the ones that we've been reading as of late, and so I'm excited to get into it. All right, so join me at chapter 17, verse 1. And after 6 days, Jesus taketh Peter, James, and John, his brother, and bringeth them up into a high mountain apart, right? So we know that Yeshua consistently throughout the last few readings has actually gone up to a mountain, and a mountain represents a higher level of consciousness. And verse 2, and was transfigured. Transfigured. This might be the first time some of you have heard this word. So the definition of transfiguration is a complete change of form or appearance into a more beautiful or spiritual state, right? So that's what transfiguration means. So it's not just be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. It's also we are seeking to be transfigured. We're trying to reach our highest spiritual state before them. And his face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as the light. So his emotional state was pure, right? And we know that clothing or raiment reflects one's emotional state from the metaphysical standpoint. Verse 3, and behold, there appeared unto them Moses and Elias talking with him. Okay. We know that Elias means my God is Yahweh. It's the Greek version of Elijah. And Moses means drawn out of water. And so that may lead some of you to have an insight in terms of why Moses and Elias were chosen, or the ones who met him at the top of this mountain, okay, of all the patriarchs in the Bible. You know, Moses represents the law. So what would Elias or Elijah represent? The law and the prophets. Yes. So definitely the law, and Elijah was one of the greatest prophets. Okay. So now they've met at this pinnacle of consciousness, right? Verse 4, then answered Peter and said unto Jesus, Lord, is it good for us to be here? If thou wilt, let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for thee, one for Moses, and one for Elias. While he yet spake, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and behold, a voice out of the cloud which said, This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear ye him. And so, if we remember the Israelites on their journey, they were making these tents and tabernacles on the journey, and God came as a cloud. So this is actually going back into the Old Testament and bringing an Old Testament story forward. So we know that cloud represents thought, right? When you see people have a brainstorm, what is it? It's a cloud, right? And then clouds over the tabernacle in the Old Testament. So this is, I forgot what the opposite of an illusion is. Illusion is foretelling of something in the future, but this is actually a reference back into the past. So we see God coming as a cloud, which happened in the Old Testament back when Moses was in the desert. Okay. Verse 6, and when the disciples heard it, they fell on their face and were sore afraid. And Jesus came and touched them and said, Arise and be not afraid. And when he had lifted up their eyes, they saw no man save Jesus only. So God speaks from the clouds. They get fearful. And now Moses and Elias are gone. All right. Verse 9, and as they came down from the mountain, Jesus charged them, saying, Tell the vision to no man until the Son of Man be risen again from the dead. So somehow Matthew got the vision, or he got the vision later from perhaps Peter, James, and John about what happened afterwards. Okay. But Yeshua says, don't share this vision with anyone. Okay. And verse 10, and his disciples asked him, saying, Why then say the scribes that Elias must come first? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Elias truly shall come first and restore all things. But I say unto you that Elias is come already, and they knew him not, but have done unto him whatsoever they listed. likewise shall also the Son of Man suffer of them. Okay. Um, I think he's referring to John being the resurrection of Elias. In Matthew 3:3-4, John was of the wilderness. Uh, John was of the wilderness, camel's hair like Esau, leather girdle like Adam, and ate locusts and wild honey. So I think that's what Yeshua is speaking to. Actually, as we go here, in verse 13 is here. Yes. Then the disciples understood he spake unto them of John the Baptist, right? John the Baptist. And Elijah means God is God is Yahweh. In John 1:21, John says he is not Elias or Elijah. In John 1:21, the disciples writing, John the Baptist says he is not Elijah. So there's some miscommunication here. Yeshua is saying he is. John the Baptist from his own mouth said he wasn't. So this is why we have to cross-reference these things for ourselves. All right. In fact, let me just pull it up for you. Our computer, John 1:21. 1:21. In John 1:21, and they asked him, what then? Art thou Elias? And he said, I am not. Art thou a prophet? And he answered, no. So John, in his own mouth, said, I'm not Elias or Elijah. But Yeshua is saying that he is. Interesting. Just leave it at that. Verse 14. Now we're going to get into the boy with the demon. And when they were come to the multitude, there came him a certain man kneeling down to him and saying, Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is a lunatic and sore vexed, and oft times he falleth into the fire and oft into the water. And I brought him to thy disciples, and they could not cure him. Then Jesus answered and said, O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? Bring him hither to me. So was he actually talking about his disciples and their inability to actually cure this boy? Or is he talking about this generation that wants to see more and more signs? Okay. Now we know the language has to be figure of speech because it says he falleth into the fire, right? Fire representing hell, right? Fire can represent hell, or it can represent the baptism by fire, which is what Yeshua was supposed to have be bringing, whereas John represented the baptism by water. So for oftentimes he falleth into the fire and off into the water. So we do have these two baptisms, one by water, one of the external, the symbolic act, and then we have the baptism by fire, which is the internal purification of the heart and the mind, right? And we also remember the pigs being sent off to actually drown in the water. Last time we heard of a demon, and I think it was two men. So just interesting to see these connections between water and fire, and also demons going into the water in one of the past healings. Okay. And I brought him to thy disciples, and they could not cure him. You faithless and perverse generation. So I think he's talking about his own disciples, right? To be honest, because he's said, "Oh, ye of little faith," to them on several occasions by now, and his time is running out, and I think he's getting frustrated that his teachings aren't getting across to them. Okay, and Jesus rebuked the devil, and he not capitalized, and he departed out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. Then came the disciples to Jesus apart and said, why could not we cast him out? And Jesus said unto them, because of your unbelief. So yes, I think above, he was actually angry at his disciples when he called them a faithless and perverse generation, or maybe he was referring to everybody. But there would be no reason to be referring to the man who was asking for his son to be cured. So Jesus is a little frustrated with his own disciples, right? People who think they understand and who think they are close, but their hearts are far from him. Okay. And Jesus said unto them, because of your unbelief. We know that your faith has made you whole, has been said on several occasions. And Yeshua always points back to the faith of the person asking for the healing. As well, what this reveals is that it's also the faith of the person who was doing the healing. So there's actually, whenever two or more are gathered and touch and agree, that's when we know healings happen. And so it takes two to make a thing go right. Because of your unbelief, for verily I say unto you, if you have faith as a grain of mustard seed, and we've already talked about the mustard seed, right? A small measure of faith, ye shall say unto the mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible to you. So, when we think about mountains, we see them as obstacles in our ways, things that we have to get over or go around. And Yeshua is saying that when you have faith, you can overcome any obstacle that is in your way, right? And your faith actually changes your perceptions. So mountains are seen as problems or challenges, and the obstacle shrinks, right? The mountain based on your perception of who you are in relationship to God, right? The obstacle shrinks based on your perception of who you are in relationship to God, which is your faith, okay? Your relationship to God, not your religion to God, your relationship to God. How much faith do you have for God to help you overcome the obstacle that is in front of you? Howbeit this kind, verse 21, howbeit this kind of goeth not out by howbeit this kind goeth not out by prayer and fasting. Okay, I think it's saying it only goes out by prayer and fasting. Okay. And while they abode in Galilee, Jesus said unto them, the Son of Man shall be betrayed into the hands of men. Okay. And they shall kill him, and the third day he shall be raised again. And they were exceeding sorry. Verse 24. And when they were come to Capernaum, they that received tribute money came to Peter and said, doth not your master pay tribute? Right? So here we go, facing the laws again. And he said, yes. And when he was come into the house, Jesus prevented him, saying, what thinkest thou, Simon? Of whom do the kings of the earth take custom or tribute? Of their own children or of strangers? They typically take tribute of strangers, right? Peter said to them, of strangers, right? Other people have to pay taxes. Jesus said unto him, then the children are free. Then the children are free. So for those churches out there that guilt trip you into tithing and offering, guess what? Here's what you could say to them. The children are free. Remember when you had like Sizzlers and the kids eat free and stuff like that? That's what Yeshua is saying here. So we actually don't need to pay tribute if they truly understood the law that they're trying to enforce. But this is what he said, notwithstanding, verse 27, lest we should offend them. So we don't really have to pay, but lest we offend them, go thou to the sea and cast a hook and take up the fish that first cometh up. And when thou hast opened up his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money. Take and give unto them for me and for thee. So this is a master class in terms of how to build wealth in verse 27. Okay. So first and foremost, the children are free. You don't need to tithe or give to the temple, to some physical temple, right? Because guess what? The temple is right here. Okay. So now Yeshua is actually going to give us a master class on how to reverse a situation of scarcity or perceived lack. One, these are the 6 steps. 1, you go to the sea. What did I say the sea represents? It represents the subconscious mind. Okay. So you leave the conscious awareness of lack. You leave the conscious awareness of lack and you go to the sea or the subconscious mind. 2, you cast a hook. What does that mean? That means catch the first abundant idea. Catch the first good abundant idea that comes to the surface. Okay. 3, you open his mouth. You listen to that idea, right? You hear what it has to say to you. Not verse 4. Step 4, ye shall find money. Now you must monetize that idea. That makes the idea sustainable. So it's not monetizing it for you to just be rich, right? It's so that the idea is sustainable. Step 5, you receive, right? It's one thing to give. That's your blessing model. Your business model is how you receive. You receive so that you can, step 6, give to them to cover more than self. So notice he didn't get just tribute tax for himself. He actually got tribute tax for him and another, right? And so when you're able to take a divine idea, right, a rich seed, and it lands in rich soil, then it bears it bears 30, 60, 100-fold. That idea, that divine idea that came from your subconscious mind, planted by the superconscious in a moment of perceived lack, but you were open to receive and you didn't get into the energetic vibration of lack, but you stayed in the energetic vibration of abundance. Now that seed takes root and it bears fruit, and that fruit is more than enough for you to cover yourself and your initial need and more. We saw this with the woman with the empty vessels, right? She was in a state of lack, said, go get the empty vessels, fill them up. And because she was obedient in that moment, she was able to produce more oil, and the jars kept filling up and up and up. And she was able to sell that and overcome her debts after losing her husband, right? So Yeshua ends this chapter with a masterclass on how to get out of a moment of scarcity as long as you don't slip into a mindset of scarcity. How to get out of a moment of scarcity as long as you don't slip into a mindset of scarcity. All right. So that concludes chapter 17. I hope that blessed you. Go ahead and let me know in chat, what was your divine download, your aha moment, your revelation from this decoding of chapter 17. And I will see you at 8 a.m. for chapter 18.